Welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Sunday, October 12th, day 737 of the war. Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our political correspondent, Tal Schneider, and military correspondent, Emanuel Fabian. Thank you both for joining me today.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, Tal.
Hi. Thank you, Amanda.
Many people have asked me when I'm going to stop saying which day of the war it is now that U.S. President Donald Trump's deal to end the war has been passed by the Israeli government. Or has it? Tal is here and we'll learn exactly what the Israeli cabinet ratified of the Trump peace plan. We'll also learn about what happened last night at what may be the final protest to release the hostages in Tel Aviv. Manny is here and he'll fill us in on what is happening on the ground in Gaza, about significant Israeli strikes in Lebanon over the weekend, and what we know about the hostages' releases tomorrow morning. All of this and more when we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our political correspondent Tal Schneider and military correspondent Emanuel Fabian. Tomorrow morning, Israel is awaiting the release of the hostages, some 20 living and some 28 dead, and U.S. President Donald Trump is set to touch down at the Ben Gurion International Airport at around 9 a.m. and address the Israeli Knesset at 11. After that, he'll head to Egypt to attend the Middle East Peace Summit, where we're hearing reports he'll be joined by Turkish President Erdogan, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and French President Emmanuel Macron, among others. So please check out our live blog for more updates on this. But Tal, let's begin with what may have been the final Saturday night protest calling for the release of the hostages that took place in Tel Aviv last night. Tell us, first of all, who in an unprecedented appearance was on the stage?
So on the stage came up Steve Witkoff, the special envoy of President Trump, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and also his wife, Ivanka Trump. So three of them, they spoke in English to a huge crowd of around 400,000 people. We don't know the exact number, but you can see from the footage that the square and all of the streets surrounding it were, filled with tons of people crowded together to listen to them. And they were cheered by the crowd. And I think some of the things they said really moved the Israeli people. Steve Witkoff started by saying that he dreamt of this evening. He referred to the loss in his own family of his own son and spoke how he related to the families of the hostages. And he said, I am talking to the Jewish, Muslims, and Christians of the region. Kushner said that October 7th, he went back to October 7th and he told the crowd how it was a shattering day for him. He spoke, he told the story that I did not hear up until now, how he was with his wife in a hotel in Colorado attending a wedding of a close friend. And then he went up to the room and started to look at the images and at the videos coming out from Israel. And he just sat on his, in his room and started to cry for the entire night. And I think many people were listening to those stories from those two envoys. They remember that this is what they felt themselves on October 7th, just sitting and crying without ability to stop this, suffering. And Kushner also talked about the Israelis' civilian population resilience, and he thanked Israeli soldiers for being so, brave in the face of this horror and tragedy.
It really felt like, to me, a big hug from the U.S. government, from the administration, from the Trumps themselves. As you mentioned, Ivanka Trump is, of course, Donald Trump's daughter. So this is a very personal moment for the whole Trump family. And it really felt like the crowd itself was hugging them right back. There was a lot of support in both directions. Wouldn't you say, Tal?
Yes, there was a lot of engagement from the crowd, lots of signs carrying Donald Trump's name and, thank you messages and appreciation and, screaming from the crowd. Also, we have to say that when Witkoff referred to Prime Minister Netanyahu, the crowd that was standing next to the stage booed him and was saying how, expressing their feelings, how disappointed they were with him. We have to mention that up until now, for 2 years, Netanyahu never visited the hostage square at all. And Witkoff has been in the job 10 months only, visited there already 3 times. This is his third visit in this place.
Okay, let's talk about the deal itself. And it's widely touted as being the end of the war. But from reporting that you and other very dedicated individuals on our team have done over the past several days, we're essentially finding out that the Israeli government has not yet signed off on the deal that ends the war, rather on the first phase of the deal, meaning only what we're seeing right now, the pullback that we're seeing of the IDF troops, the releases of the hostages. So tell us very concretely, what exactly did the Israeli government sign off on, vote on?
Right. It's very interesting, the differences between the paper that Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer signed in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, which was titled End of the War, and the resolution that was passed by the ministers on Thursday night, very late. I talked to 3 ministers and to other people very close to the people who are crafting those resolutions by the government, and they explained to me very clear that Dermer's paper, the paper that Dermer signed on, which says the end of the war, was presented to the ministers, but was not part of the resolution of the government. And the reason for that is because this paper says end of the war, whereas the government specifically, dealt with the details of how to release the hostages, how to release terrorists from the Israeli jails, and to what line the military will withdraw, which they already did, and the entry of humanitarian aid, 600 trucks a day, something that started this morning, Sunday. So there is a gap between what the president is talking about to what the Israeli government actually approved. And the reason that they did not approve the whole, end of war yet is because the details are very sketchy as per who is the international body that will govern, how will the Hamas disarm, what will be, the Hamas is still claiming they have a future role in the future management of Gaza, and the Israeli government, of course, is completely, not agreeing to that. So, all of those details, and that's a lot of details, it will take, I suppose, weeks and maybe months to craft that. It's very, very crucial because this is a security issues. And so those things are completely not in the Israeli government resolution. Only the 4 parts that I've just said: release of the hostages, release of terrorists, withdraw to the yellow line, and the humanitarian aid that is flowing in at the moment.
So to answer our listeners, I will continue saying which day of the war it is until this is indeed hammered out. And officially, we are right now in a ceasefire. Correct, Tal?
Yes, we are in a ceasefire since Thursday at 12 p.m., 72 hours. Well, I'm sorry, is it Friday at 12 p.m.? Where the events here are so crazy. We are having a really hard time. We are within the 72 hours period. We're expecting all hostages to be, all 20 hostages, live hostages, to be out by Monday, 12 p.m. This will be around 5 a.m. Eastern time in the United States. They may start to coming out, a little bit earlier than that. So if you stay up very late on Sunday night, you may see some of them coming out. So we're going to have tomorrow, Monday, split screens, because we're going to have the President of the United States coming here, landing in Ben Gurion on one part of the screen. On the other part of the screen, we might see all of those people that we were talking about them for those 2 years being hugged by their families. And even though, Amanda, you may still continue to count the days of the war, I think for most of the Israeli public, this will bring an end to this mass tragedy that we've been experiencing for 2 years and 4 days.
Tal, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll go to a short break now. And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our military correspondent, Emanuel Fabian. Manny, the IDF completed a withdrawal to agreed upon deployment lines in the Gaza Strip on Friday at noon, officially beginning the ceasefire. And so can you tell us what exactly is the IDF's role in the Gaza Strip right now?
So its main role is just to hold on to this territory for the foreseeable future. At least according to the agreement, the lines that were defined by the mediators, Israel is in control of 53% of Gaza's territory, which is most of the territory, but it's important to stress that the vast majority of this is outside of urban areas. And the urban areas that the IDF is in control of are, I would say, no longer urban areas because all the buildings in them have been flattened. So the army is not deployed in any areas, not really with civilians in it. There's only one exception, which is one of these Gazan clans, the Abu Shabab clan, which is still in an area under IDF control, but that's really the only exception.
So the Abu Shabab are in the Rafah area, correct, in the south?
Correct.
And so there are no, as far as we know, there are no actual Gazans in that area aside from this clan. Is that right?
There are civilians there alongside the clan itself. I think I remember seeing once there's around 1,000, maybe a bit more. Not huge, a small camp where the clan operates, and that's under an area that's under Israeli control. But aside from that, the areas that the IDF is now in control of are essentially clear of all Palestinians and essentially all buildings as well. The army doesn't have soldiers, of course, at every point. It's not deployed its forces on the front line, on the lines that have been sort of demarcated in the deal. The Israeli positions are further back in order to be able to actually defend them properly. But that's what the army is doing now. It says it will continue to operate defensively if Hamas tries to attack troops, or if Palestinians try to approach the Israeli border or approach areas where the army is operating, then it will strike them. And additionally, this morning, Defense Minister Israel Katz put out a statement saying that he had ordered the army to now focus on demolishing all of Hamas's tunnels in all of Gaza. It's not really quite clear how that would work during the ceasefire in areas that the army doesn't control, but I think what that means is the army will destroy any remaining infrastructure in the areas that it currently controls, and potentially with this other international force that may take control of Gaza from Hamas, then cooperate with them to locate and destroy Hamas's remaining infrastructure. But I don't think that's something in the short term. I think that's in the long term.
Okay, you mentioned the international force, and we heard reports over the weekend of 200 U.S. troops that were sent over to the region. I'm not sure if they're going to be based in Israel or based in Egypt and what their role is meant to be. Do you have any words of enlightenment here on this?
As far as I know, they will be based in Israel at an airbase in southern/central Israel. And they're there to observe this ceasefire. Yesterday, the U.S. Central Command Chief Admiral Brad Cooper visited Gaza alongside Witkoff and Jared Kushner and the IDF Chief of Staff, and he issued a statement afterwards, Cooper, saying that this whole mechanism was beginning and that no U.S. troops would need to be on the ground in Gaza for it to continue. So their exact role is, it's not too clear. Everyone's been a little bit vague about it, but it seems like they will be based in Israel and to observe the ceasefire and to potentially restrain Israel against acting against Hamas if there's some sort of violation. But on the other hand, I do think that Israel is interested in letting this ceasefire go ahead. For one, it wants the hostages back. It doesn't want Hamas to continue holding on to them. And it knows, I think, Israel, that this deal is actually quite good for it. We still have the army in control of most of Gaza's territory. And if we don't move on to these further phases of ending the war entirely, then Israel will continue to hold on to this territory. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
So Israel is meant to tomorrow get all the hostages back, both the living and the dead. But from what I understand, many of the dead have not been located 100% within the Gaza Strip. And as I understand it as well, Manny, the IDF is meant to help out in the efforts to locate them, but alongside some kind of international force. What do you know about this?
Right. So the 20 confirmed living hostages will be released tomorrow. Probably all of them together, which is a challenge of itself. But the remains of the dead hostages and the slain hostages, Israel is aware that Hamas doesn't know where all the hostages are, the remains are. And this will delay the release of all of them. So we're not going to see all of the dead hostages being released as well tomorrow. And we will probably hear from Israeli officials complaining about this, how Hamas is violating the deal. But we can already say from now, Israel is very aware of this. They know that not all of them are in Hamas's hands. Some of them are under the rubble. We saw some cases where the army recovered the bodies of hostages almost by chance, searching in random areas and just happened to come across it in a tunnel. So there's definitely a lack of information on all these hostages. But there was a report that there's some sort of international task force with Turkey and some other nations who will be involved potentially in locating them. I'm assuming in those kind of cases, Israel will provide intelligence, and then these international forces, whenever they are deployed to Gaza, will then go and search and retrieve the bodies. And Hamas, I'm sure, will continue to also search for the bodies and recover them and release them back to Israel. But this assessment that has been even since the beginning of the war is that there may be the bodies of hostages which will never be found, purely because Hamas doesn't know where they are. There's been cases where Hamas terrorists have been holding hostages and they were then killed and they weren't in contact with anyone else in Hamas, so there's no way of knowing what happened to them. But it's something that Israeli officials have been telling the families as well, letting them know that there is a chance that the remains of their loved ones may not be recovered now or at all. It's a very difficult situation, I'm sure.
Let's continue in a slightly more optimistic vein and talk about the release of the living hostages. What do we know about the rollout for tomorrow?
So, like I said, they're likely going to be released all at once, all 20. And the army says it's prepared for this. So Hamas is going to release them without a ceremony, like they did in the past. For most of the hostages, they held ceremonies. There were 2 exceptions. And then all of the hostages, if they are released altogether, they'll be brought to the Re'im base near the Gaza border for an initial health assessment, to meet with members of their family, to get changed, to eat something.
What is the Red Cross's role in all of this?
So Hamas will, as in the past, Hamas will hand over the hostages to the Red Cross, and then the Red Cross will bring them to IDF troops in Gaza, and then the IDF will escort them out of Gaza to the Re'im base. I'll add that if any of the hostages are in a condition that requires immediate health attention, then they'll be airlifted straight away to Soroka Hospital in Beersheba. But otherwise, they'll all be taken to the Re'im base where their family will be waiting, and then several hours later, they'll be taken to hospitals in central Israel for this long rehabilitation. Sometimes the hostages have stayed in the hospitals for weeks, as doctors assess their situation and try to bring them back up to health, because of course after spending 737 days now in the tunnels in Gaza, it's not good for one's health, to put that lightly. And then I'm sure you're going to ask about the release of the dead hostages as well. The process is similar. So Hamas will give them to the Red Cross will bring them to the army, and the IDF will hold a small ceremony in Gaza. They'll check the caskets, that there's actually remains in them. They'll also, sappers will have to check them to make sure Hamas has not attached anything suspicious to them or potentially booby-trapped them. And then there'll be a ceremony led by a military rabbi. And then these caskets will be taken for identification. The remains inside will be taken for identification. The civilians will be taken to the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute in Tel Aviv. And the remains of slain soldiers will be taken to the IDF Shura camp for identification there. It's a different process with soldiers and civilians. And they expect that the identification will take up to 2 days. Sometimes it can be a lot quicker if there's various ways of being able to do it quicker, but there can be cases of that these hostages were killed on October 7th. They died 2 years ago, so the process may be more difficult, and their condition, depending on that, it could take longer.
Right, and we obviously want to make sure that the correct remains are in the caskets, unlike what happened, of course, unfortunately, initially with the case of Shiri Bibas. Now, as Tal mentioned, some 600 aid trucks are meant to be processed and put into the Gaza Strip starting from today. But we're also hearing, information about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Is it open? Is it not open? There were meant to be 4 sites initially. Then they started drawing down to 3, I believe. So what is happening as far as with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation?
So first of all, the GHF site in central Gaza in the Netzarim corridor area was abandoned on Friday. It was in an area under IDF control, and then when the IDF withdrew, the GHF also abandoned that site, and it's likely not going to reopen. There are still 3 sites in the Rafah area under IDF control, and we saw on Friday that 2 of them were open and they distributed aid as usual. I don't think they opened on Saturday. We didn't see an update from them, and we were able to confirm this morning that due to the hostage releases, which will begin tomorrow, Israel has requested that the sites remain closed so that the army can focus solely on the hostage release and not anything else, and not have civilians going to these aid sites under army control. They want to really only focus on the hostage release. And also, we're going to see this increase of aid going into Gaza now. And GHF wants to be able to prepare to basically receive all this aid and get itself ready and potentially open new sites. So as far as I understand, the sites will be closed for the next couple days, but a source told me that during the ceasefire, following the hostage release, the aid sites will be open as usual in the Rafah area, and potentially in the future they will open more sites in other areas of Gaza, but it's possibly more complicated now that the army doesn't control those areas.
Let's turn our eyes to the north. And over the weekend, the Israeli Air Force bombed hundreds of heavy engineering vehicles it said were being used by Hezbollah to restore its infrastructure in southern Lebanon. The attack apparently only killed 1 individual, but the loss of these vehicles, I would imagine, Manny, is quite a blow to Hezbollah.
Yeah, so Hezbollah has been attempting since the November ceasefire to restore its infrastructure in Lebanon, less so in southern Lebanon because the army keeps trying to foil their attempts, but there are still attempts, and we've seen, I would say in the past couple weeks, dozens of strikes on, an excavator here or an operative there trying to rebuild, trying to clear rubble, trying to access a house that was used by Hezbollah. But this strike over the weekend was, I would say, more unusual, where the Israeli Air Force bombed around 10 different sites in southern Lebanon, where I would call them yards, basically, where there were dozens of these excavators and bulldozers and these smaller Bobcat utility vehicles being stored. And Israel basically bombed them and destroyed them. And according to Lebanese media, around 300 of these heavy engineering vehicles were destroyed in these strikes. And Israel said that all these vehicles were being used by Hezbollah and were intended to be used to restore infrastructure in southern Lebanon. Very unusual. And then the person killed in the strike, according to Lebanese media, was a Syrian national who just happened to be passing by in a van during the strike, not someone at the site or a Hezbollah official. I saw one report that this Syrian is actually an Assad soldier from the Assad regime, and he'd fled to Lebanon at one point, but entirely random and not someone Israel was intending to target in this strike.
So that, Manny, we've gone on quite a long time, but I just want to ask you one more question because, of course, everyone is wondering, is this the model that the IDF is going to be using in Gaza from here on out? Meaning there is a ceasefire since November 27th, 2024, and yet the IDF continues to, essentially, it appears to me, act pretty freely in southern Lebanon.
If the Americans support it, then I think Israel will do the same thing in Gaza. Is my assessment. If the US tells Israel, in the side letter that we saw with Lebanon, which is you can act against Hezbollah if they pose an imminent threat. If the Americans say the same thing to Israel regarding Gaza, if you see Hamas trying to rebuild a rocket factory, you can act, then I think Israel will act. But if the US says, leave it alone, let's try and replace Hamas with this new international force, and let's not try to bomb him and try to and maybe that'll destabilize, then Israel won't. But I think that with the US support, then Israel will act the same way in Gaza.
Okay, Manny, time will tell, obviously, and I assume you're going to join me tomorrow. So until tomorrow, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's Daily Briefing. Please check out another installment tomorrow. This episode was produced by the Podwaves. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.